Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll just give it a couple of seconds here to let people get into the webinar. But we have a very great topic today, how to successfully promote your listing. Having an STR doesn't mean much if you're not getting booked. So hopefully you learn some good tips and tricks during this session. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and we will email you the recording in the next couple days, along with any helpful resources that might come up during this session. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or the Q&A spot, and we will get to those at the end of our discussion. And if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, don't worry, we will email you an answer. We want to make sure we get everyone answers. Just other couple quick things. We do have a Facebook community, the Insider AirDNA Network, I think, Tom, is that the name of it?
Yeah, AirDNA Insider Network. Yeah,
Yep.
just scroll around a little bit.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So if you're on Facebook, we highly recommend you join that community. We share a lot of great resources, but it's also a place that you can connect with other hosts and investors. Share your success stories, ask questions, get other people's opinions. There's no one right way to do this business. So learning from each other is a great way to help everyone be successful. So let's go ahead and jump in. Tom is going to lead us through our discussion today. So Tom, take us away.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Jamie. So yeah, as Jamie mentioned, today we're going to be talking about how to successfully promote your short-term rental listing. So let me just share my screen. Perfect. So there's obviously, as Jamie said, there's no perfect or right or wrong way of doing this. Everyone has to do it their own way. But we're just going to share some helpful tips and pointers that we've come across that can help really set your listing apart and help your listing get more bookings and in turn make your listing more successful. So the first one, kind of obvious, I guess, is make your listing as attractive as possible. And there's a number of ways of doing this. Photos. These are going to be, how people are really going to assess whether or not your listing is what they're looking for. Before they even look at price, they're going to look at the photos and sort of see whether it kind of aligns with what their vision of where they want to stay is. So first thing to consider, I think, is, whether or not to have a professional photographer help you with these photos. It can really make a difference. Things like lighting, time of day, angles of the rooms, these are all things that they will definitely consider and might not be what you consider. So it's just something to bear in mind, and it can really sort of set your listing apart. And once you have those photos, or even if you don't go down the route of having a professional photographer, think about your cover image, the one that's going to pop up on your listing, whether it's on Airbnb or VRBO. That's the real headline image. So you really want that one to kind of give an idea of what your property is and what you're trying to get across, and also kind of help it speak to the audience that you're trying to attract. If we look at this image here, you can see this, beautiful coastal villa, has a pool. You can see straight away the kind of people it might be trying to attract, groups of people, maybe older, for a birthday party, that kind of thing, or a week-long vacation with a big group. So these are all things that are really useful or really important to consider when it comes to the photography of your property, and in turn then how you kind of use those photos to highlight your listing. The other thing to consider again is also amenities. Whilst it's great that you can kind of filter by amenities with Airbnb, taking pictures of those amenities so people can kind of see what they look like. Same example again, we've got the pool here. Whether it be a hot tub or anything like that, it's always good to really highlight those amenities as your listing's unique selling point, I suppose. And then the same thing goes for the listing headline and description. What kind of words are you using to really describe it? It's no good just sort of saying 4-bed house by the sea. Whilst I appreciate everyone's kind of wants to things not to take too much time, but you really have to put a bit of effort in and kind of sell it with that headline and that description. And again, the headline, it's going to be the first thing people see. If there's something you really want to call out, do it in that headline. So again, let's use this picture as an example. Coastal villa with a pool straight away. That's going to attract a certain type of audience straight away, and then the photos are only going to kind of really add to that. And then the final thing is reviews. Obviously, you kind of need people to stay before you get these, but reviews are incredibly important in terms of, I guess, allaying any fears potential guests might have about your listing. Having those verified reviews by previous guests is only going to make your listing more attractive, and kind of back up what the description and the photos kind of say already. So those three all kind of work in tandem. As I say, the reviews, if you're just starting out on your journey, it's kind of harder to do so, but kind of really try and ensure that the reviews you do start to get really reflect what you hope or what you're trying to project with your listing.
A quick comment here, Tom. Again, just to reiterate, think about your guests when you're doing your photos, writing your description, focusing on your headline, what's going to be most appealing to them. I have, for instance, I own a home in the beach in North Carolina. It's a big family destination, and my house has 2 master bedrooms with an attached bath. So that is what I call out in my headline because it's very appealing to our target guests. I also want to say, especially if you're on Airbnb, make sure you take advantage of those first 5 photos, not just your cover photo. People can click through a few when they're hovering over your listing. So take your most appealing photo, make that your cover photo, and then maybe highlight another great view or your amenities in pictures 2 and 3 and 4. So you can really capture that attention and make your property as appealing as possible. I've seen so many listings where the cover photo is literally just the front of the house. And I'm like, that's great. Why do I want to book this 2-story brick home? Like what's special about it? Always think about what's special.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, great call on those first five photos. Okay, moving on. Next thing is kind of pricing. So as we discussed, the imagery and the wording around your listing is super important, but the price is always going to have an impact on whether or not people book as well. So first thing is just kind of make that pricing appealing. Now, I appreciate this is kind of challenging. You're trying to make this a profitable business, so you don't want to drop your prices too much. But we have noticed, especially that even if you just reduced your nightly rate by maybe $1 a day compared to your closest competitors, people do see more bookings coming because of that. So it's always just a good idea to sort of, I first of all identify those competitors, identify them, based on how similar they are to your property, compare the photos again, compare everything we just went over in the previous slide, and then look at how they've priced, and how that kind of stacks up against your listing, and whether or not you can kind of make just those incremental changes that over time will see more booking coming in. And then that leads into dynamic pricing tools. So I appreciate those will kind of go off how other people have priced in the market, but they are customizable as well. You can kind of change them depending on what they recommend. And if they are kind of recommending equivalent with those competitors, then you've got the option to kind of reduce it yourself. And as I say, right at the bottom there, you've got to look at your competitors. So yeah, the competitor aspect is super important, and with AirDNA there's a couple of tools that can kind of help you do that. You can create a custom comp set, for example, once you connect your property, and doing that you can kind of first of all identify those competitors and see how you stack up against them both historically and for the next 6 months. So you can kind of see how you're doing in terms of bookings, and really sort of make it like I say, adjust those rates to really kind of make your next 6 months of bookings very positive. The other thing to do is look at other channels, whether you're listed on Airbnb or just VRBO or both, or even if you had your own private website or listing website, sorry. And that's just a case of keeping on top of that calendar to make sure that you're not double booked, because that wouldn't be ideal. Okay.
Don't just set your rate and forget it. Airbnb and Vrbo aren't very forthcoming with their algorithms, but a lot of hosts feel that the more they update their listing and their prices, the more likely they are to show up on the first page of the results or just higher in the search results. So even like Tom said, adjusting your prices by $1 or $2, especially during slow season, adding discounts or promotions is a great way to get bumped up in those search listings and to make your listing more appealing. And then the last thing I want to say is look at what the total price to the guest will be. If your weekend long stay is $405, can you lower it so that it's $399? Just think about the kind of psychology around pricing that a guest might immediately discount your place because it's over $400. And if you discount it by $6, you could get a booking because it meets their criteria. So just again, think like the guest, and then constantly be in there and kind of adjusting prices. A dynamic pricing tool can help you with that, but you also still want to keep an eye on it, just to make sure it's in line with what you need.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on. Next thing is communication. So this is obviously something that will come into play sort of more post-booking or leading up to a booking, but it's still super important to bear in mind, and it kind of leans into that that review. So, or those guest reviews, sorry. So quick responses. There's nothing worse when you're trying to book an Airbnb that you message the host and they don't get back to you. You're there looking now. You want to book somewhere now. So if you have to message the host, kind of giving a saying when you're going to arrive, what you're looking to do, all these kind of things, you're looking for a response fairly quickly so you can make the booking, and you kind of have that peace of mind that you have a place ready and it'll be ready for when you arrive. The other thing is then from the host side, clarity on what to do and what's expected. Whether it's a in-person check-in or it's a lockbox for the key, kind of policies on cleaning, when the garbage needs to go out, whether it's a specific day, whether there's a cleaner coming, depending on how long he's staying, these kind of things. So it's all super important to get those messages across quickly, efficiently, and friendly, so that the guest is kind of put at ease that everything's going to be taken care of once they hit that book button. The other thing to bear in mind is kind of security as well. So, a lot of people may not have stayed in a short-term rental before, aren't sort of super kind of aware of how the process works, and what they can expect on the other end. And a lot of people are kind of nervous about this, especially when it's all kind of automated. So I think it's just always good as well to kind of put any fears, allay any fears on their side, kind of make sure that they know who has access to the property when they may be coming, if maybe it's a longer stay and there's a cleaner, for example, so they don't have any unexpected surprises, and just kind of outline everything that might happen during their stay in terms of who might be visiting or not, and what to do with keys and this kind of thing at the end. So yeah, it's just super important to have this strong communication in place, and to really kind of help the guest feel at ease, and that you're kind of doing everything you can to make that experience as seamless and as easy as possible for them.
Good communication is a great way to get repeat guests. And if you can capture someone who already knows about your space, then that's, one less guest you have to promote to. They're already there, so keep them coming back.
Yeah. Cool. And then on to marketing and advertising. So this one is obviously pretty important if you are trying to promote. So we kind of touched on this earlier. Where are you advertising? The go-to for a lot of people is obviously Airbnb, VRBO as well. But whether maybe it's time to start looking at other places as well. As I mentioned earlier, whether you build a website specifically for your listing, it could even just be an Instagram page or a Facebook page. A lot of people have started to use TikTok as well. So all these avenues of social media are different options for you to kind of put your listing in front of people. And how are people finding you? So obviously, Airbnb has its own algorithm in terms of how it determines who sits at the top of the list when you kind of look in an area. But how are you kind of pushing it in front of people before that? So Instagram and TikTok are really great examples of that, kind of building a following for your listing. It's something you can do with the reviews. You can ask, obviously, please leave a review. We also have an Instagram page you wouldn't mind following. The more followers you have, the more kind of traction the listing generates using reels and that kind of thing. It puts your listing in front of people without them even searching for it. So it's a really useful tool to kind of make your listing more visible, and in turn, kind of helping you get more bookings in the long run. And then I've got at the bottom here, what are others doing? So what are other hosts doing? So again, it kind of goes down to those competitors. So once you find those competitors, you can kind of look whether, first of all, they have an Instagram page or whether they have their own booking page. And it's the short-term rental industry is great because as I say, there's no one size fits all. There's no solution that's gonna work for everyone, but it's super helpful because so many people have so many different strategies, and it's always really helpful to kind of look at what they're doing and take aspects of that into your own process, and in turn sort of helping your business grow on from there as well. You've also got the option to do some paid advertising with Google. I know Jamie, we were talking about earlier, there's companies that will kind of offer to type or to write up your listing description, and kind of use some search engine optimization to boost that up the hit list on Google. But is there anything else you want to add on that?
I would just say get creative. Again, look at what others are doing, and it's going to be so dependent on your market. If you can kind of gather where guests are coming from, that is a good option. If you want to get into the paid advertising, you can do some sort of like targeted advertising there. There are plenty of courses on YouTube to help you figure out how to do all of this depending on where you want to advertise. And then get creative based on your market. Like if you're near a college, for instance, and graduation is coming up, or move-in weekend, or parents' family visiting weekend, post on local Facebook groups that your house is available. You might even consider something like Craigslist. That also would be a great time to look into Google advertising, or consider putting your home up on Google's short-term rental solution there, as these parents and family members are looking for places to stay during these prime weekends. A quick note on, Tom did mention there are companies who will offer to write your description and your headline to optimize it. If you're not comfortable doing it yourself, or you're not sure you're doing it right, those are good options. But I will say, if they promise that you will show up on the first page of Airbnb or Vrbo, do not believe them. SEO, or search engine optimization, any sort of optimization, is kind of like a black magic, and no one can make promises like that. The algorithms change all the time. You're competing against a whole heck of a lot of people. So you can use them to help you get started, but don't expect that to be, the perfect solution to make sure that your home is always top and always booked. So yeah.
Absolutely. Perfect. And so the last point we're going to touch on today is guest experience. And I think this is a super important one. And I think it's one that kind of is becoming a lot more important for guests in general. So people aren't just looking for a place to stay necessarily anymore. A lot of people are, but people are also looking for that kind of experience whilst they're there. So it's a good idea to sort of consider what your listing offers in terms of experience, whether it's an amenity, or there's an actual experience that you've bedded in there as well. Like a lot of or some hosts kind of offer like a bike tour. They'll have bikes that they have with their property, and they offer the kind of tour of the area as an additional cost on top. So that's just one example. So I think it's something that can really set your listing apart, having that kind of additional offering on top of the stay itself. And then there's also the kind of obvious stuff like local recommendations, just a kind of a little book kind of explaining good restaurants, points of interest, this kind of thing. These little touches really help to kind of, first of all, for your reviews, and also kind of what Jamie touched on earlier in terms of repeat guests, these kind of little touches that really make the guests feel that they're really valued. And then guest incentives. So this again kind of touches on repeat bookings, but you could offer discounts potentially for any repeat bookings. And again, it just kind of builds that relationship and kind of makes it, I guess, a bit of a stronger bond between the guest and your listing, and in turn you as the host. So it just kind of creates this much bigger positive experience of, like I say, not just a guest staying at an Airbnb, but it's a guest, it's someone coming and experience something at your listing. So all those together, I think, are really kind of useful to kind of really garner that overall better experience for the guest, and in turn sort of making your listing more appealing, and in turn making it more likely for them to recommend you, to come back, and as I say earlier, kind of follow any social channels that you may have in place. Any final thoughts on that one, Jamie? I think that's our last slide, actually. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Again, I just say focus on those amenities, make sure they're highlighted very prominently at the top of your description, that you have photos of them. Maybe consider putting in photos of local attractions, or the beach if you're there, or things like that, so people kind of get a feel for what it would be like to be at your property. So yeah, again, just think like the guest is the best way to figure out how the best to promote your listing. How do you go find places to stay? What are you looking for? The more you can replicate that, like the more likely people are to be attracted to your listing. So just always think like the guest. And like I said, if you're interested in any sort of advertising, you can look up YouTube videos, or if you're interested to see how other people are promoting their properties, joining a place like our AirDNA Insiders Network is a great place to ask others what they're doing, in addition to just kind of poking around and trying to figure out what your competitors are doing. Great. So we have time for a few questions. Go ahead and type up your question in the Q&A part of Zoom. It should be at the bottom of your screen. So the first one we have is regarding dynamic pricing tools. Do they automatically adjust the pricing on the listing platform like Airbnb, or do you have to manually review and adjust the prices? So there's kind of two different options, and it depends on which solution you go with. Some of them will automatically push them, and some of them you would go and adjust your own prices, and some give you the option of kind of what you want to do. Just so everyone knows, AirDNA does have a dynamic pricing tool. It's called Smart Rates. We make pricing recommendations for your exact listing based on your market and a lot of market factors like seasonality, day of the week, booking lead time, things like that. And right now our tool is set up so that you can set your own settings. So you can say, I want to have conservative pricing or aggressive pricing. I want to do discounts for gap days, things like that. And then you would manually input that to wherever your booking is, whether it's Airbnb or Vrbo or anything like that, to give you a little bit more control over your whole process. Excellent. General pricing question. What are the additional costs? Okay, yep. Jessica, we'll get back to you on that. But right now, AirDNA is priced per market. So if you just go into your account, you can kind of see what the different subscriptions are. The webinar is being recorded. And so that's kind of all of the questions. If there's a few on here that we'll get back to you one-on-one with, I really appreciate those. If you are not yet an AirDNA user, if you don't have an account yet, we did just launch a beta experience of some updates that are coming to our app very soon. So if you go to our homepage, just airdna.co, you can sign up for that beta experience and kind of start poking around. If you do already have an AirDNA account, we're really happy to have you, and you'll be seeing these changes very, very soon, within the next couple of weeks. And then also check back to our website, because we'll be having some webinars about those exciting new features that we're going to be rolling out. Tom, anything else you want to say in closing?
No, I think we covered everything. Yeah, thanks very much for your insight, Jamie, and thanks everyone for joining.